Welcome to the Fictitious Dark, where we explore the lines between the truth and the fictitious. And today we're delving just a little bit deeper into the fictitious side of things with a story reading, and the title is, If You See a Woman with a Serrated Smile, You Need to Read This as a Matter of Life and Death. This is the story on r/nosleep. It was posted 3 years ago. There's a part 1 and part 2. And so Josiah is going to take the honor of reading part 1, and then I will follow up with part 2.
All right. I'm a government employee. My name isn't important. All you need to worry about is what I have to say. I work at a compound known as the facility. Within it, we perform research on things the public would find unappetizing. Officially, we're listed under experimental weapons development, but lately our umbrella has spread much wider. Suffice it to say that there are things out there that go bump in the night, things both legendary, mundane. They exert their influence upon us and defy explanation, My job is to interview individuals who believe they've encountered such entities and determine if their accounts are fact or fiction. What my job is not to do, however, is share those interviews. However, in this case, I don't think I have a choice. Here's the account. The room is cramped, dimly lit, and smells vaguely of stale piss and black mold. A light hangs above the table between us, rocking back and forth and doing a poor job illuminating much of anything. Still, I can see the man's gaunt face and the fields on my clipboard. It's enough. It'll do. I ask the man to tell me his story, and it begins. It happened at the cabin, he says. He's 20-something, with a long nose and 5 o'clock shadow. When he reaches for a cigarette, his hands shake like a 1950s pickup truck. Not my cabin, he adds. It belonged to Emily, but she invited us up, the 3 of us. My pen scratches across my clipboard. 4 individuals. For leisure, I'll assume? He cocks an eyebrow at me. Yeah, I guess. A laugh escapes his lips. It's short, awkward. Why else do people go to cabins? We wanted to get drunk, stoned, forget our problems for the weekend, like normal people do. Of course, I say, marking down his response. His eyes dart toward the camera in the corner of the room, and his tongue slips across his lips. They're chapped, cracked, and bleeding. He looks worse than a mess. He looks like a disaster. The cameras, he says. What's the deal with them? You said you weren't a cop. I'm not, I reassure him. The cameras are for my own records. Events, encounters with the paranormal, they're tricky things, Sometimes we catch items in recording we'd otherwise miss in person. He stares at me a while. His lip curls in, his teeth gnawing at it. It's a look I've seen before, the look where he's wondering if maybe he's being played. He's wondering if this is a sting operation. He's taking the bait. I'm gonna have to throw him in a psych ward, or worse. It's better if you tell me everything, I say, placing my clipboard on the desk between us. I'm not here to have you put away, only to get some answers. A moment of dead air hangs between us, and it's the sort of moment I recognize. He's weighing the situation, sizing me up. He's wondering if he's comfortable talking about something this batshit insane with a total stranger. Then he takes a breath, followed by a deep drag, and he ashes the cigarette. Sure, he says. He taps a finger on the desk, gathers his thoughts. It happened late at night. The 4 of us had been drinking in the cabin, doing mushrooms. But we all slept outside in tents since the place is full of spiders. Hardly ever got used. Why's that? I check a box labeled, intoxicated. He shrugs. Bad memories, I think. I tilt my head to the side, inviting him to continue. The cabin belonged to Emily's mom, he explains. She passed away when Em was a little girl, and the place had been a mausoleum ever since Em thinks it has a bad mojo. And what do you think? What do I think? He tastes the question. I think that... He trails off, his eyes losing focus, gazing at the splintered wooden table between us. Suddenly, he seems far away. There's an emptiness to his expression, a disconnect. I wonder if he's thinking of legends and nightmares. I wondered if he's thinking of Jagged Janice. Is everything all right? I ask. He blinks and nods. My pen scratches across my clipboard. Subject appears traumatized, avoidant. What's that? He asks. What are you writing? He leans forward, his thin frame eclipsing the table as he narrows his eyes on my form. I pull it away. It's private. How come? Your knowledge of my notes could influence your account. I'd prefer if such biases were avoided. His face creases. Jaw clenches. Now, I say. Please continue. He looks angry as he sits back in his chair, pissed. He's gnawing at his lips again and his fingers tapping the table like a Gatling gun. There's no doubt in my mind this guy's been through a lot, but I need to make sure he's telling the truth, and in order to do that, he can't know anything, nothing at all. Fine, he says at length. We'll do it your way. Yes, we always do. Like I said, we were drinking in the cabin, swapping old war stories from high school, talking about stupid pranks we'd pull, or places we'd tag, or teachers we hated. We reflected. Pretty soon, though, we got drunk enough that stuff went deeper. We started talking about all the silly surface bullshit, and started talking about the stuff that really meant something to us, the things that set our souls on fire. Well, that's a poetic turn of phrase. Are you a writer? He shrugs. Let me rephrase. Would you describe yourself as having an active imagination? The man studies me, gears turning in his head. Again, he's wondering if I'm goading him into an admission of insanity. He's wondering if I'm calculating what amount of antipsychotics it would take to counterbalance his paranoia and what size straitjacket would best fit his scarecrow frame. But I'm not doing any of that. The truth is, I don't care if he's insane or perfectly lucid. I don't give a damn about him at all. All I care about is whether or not he's seen Jagged Janice, and that he isn't another liar. My imagination isn't anything special, he says at length. Now, can I tell my fucking story, or are you gonna keep interrupting? I smile. Sure. Go ahead. He takes a breath, spares a half second to glare at me. The four of us are drinking in M's cabin, and she starts to get low, like depressed. She's usually a pretty upbeat person, so I ask her what's up, and she says she's just been feeling a bit haunted since coming back to the cabin. I lift an eyebrow. Her brother... The man sighs, shakes his head as though determining how best to phrase his next words. Her brother died at the cabin, drowned to death in the ocean 100 yards from the front door. Emily watched it happen. She watched her brother drown? He nods. She was 3 years old. She didn't understand what was happening. Not really. There wasn't anything she could do. I see. It's a sad story, but not really what I came here for. Worse still, nothing yet matches the Jagged Janice legend. Anything else? The man looks up at me, and disbelief swims in his eyes. Anything else, he mutters. No, asshole. That's it. She watched her brother die, and it made her feel like shit. I'm not here for Emily's story, I'm here for yours. You'll excuse me if I forget to feign empathy for a woman I've never met. I check a box labeled confrontational and rest my pen on the clipboard. Now then. You said you were drinking, talking. What happened after that? His jaw is set, clenched. He looks like he wants to slug me in the face, and honestly, I wouldn't blame him, but instead he takes a drag of his cigarette and leans back in his chair. We drink and talk until our eyes get droopy, he says. And then we go to bed. It's like any night, I guess. Up until a point. There's an implication in his words, but I'll deal with it later. For now, I need more details. I need to understand the setting of the event as clearly as I can. The police report, I say, glancing down at my copy of the document, mentions the incident occurred inside of the cabin. Is that right? That's right. Can you describe it for me, the layout? He scratches the back of his head, brows furrowed. There's a picture being painted in his mind, colored by memories. It's a T-shaped cabin, capital T. There's 2 bedrooms on either side of the T, and to the very top center is a bathroom. The bottom of the T is the living room and the kitchen, and the front door. Simple enough. I make a quick sketch of it on my form. According to the report, the event occurred in the washroom. I'd like you to talk about that. His eyes narrow, his mouth twitches. He sucks in on his cigarette like it's the last drag he'll ever have. Slow. Long. He burns it down to the filter, eyes bloodshot, and he drops it into the ashtray. You got any more of these? Sure. I reach inside my jacket and pull out a pack, tossing it to him. The man catches it and flips it open. His hands are shaking. They're shaking so hard that he can hardly light the smoke after he slips it into his mouth. Let me, I offer. No, he says. I've got it. The lighter strikes and a flame dances to life. He hovers it below his dart until an ember glows. Then the man leans back, takes a deep drag, and blows out a storm cloud. You're the real deal, huh? I'm sorry? The real deal. You actually believe me, don't you? Maybe, I say. Truthfully, I'm still making up my mind. You said the four of you quit drinking to go to sleep, back in your tents, I presume. What happened after that? He ashes the cigarette. Nature calls. I gotta take a shit, so I get up and head to the cabin. When I unzip the tent, though, I can't see the dirt in front of me. It's that dark outside, pitch black. No moon? He shrugs. Wasn't looking for one. All I know is I've gotta take a shit, and I'm not about to use the outhouse. It smells worse than death. So I make my way to the cabin. Once I get inside, though, this weird feeling comes over me. Weird feeling? Like I'm being watched. Promising. The place feels empty. Lonely. It's just me, the bugs, and the light from my phone. The light's making shadows out of everything. The dusty fridge, the cluttered shelves, the messy counters. There's 1,000 shapes all around, shifting with every step, and I get this feeling of, I don't know, dread. It comes over me like I'm not safe. The man pauses, sweat beads down his forehead. Sorry, he says. I just haven't thought about it this much since the night it happened. Don't worry, I tell him. Events are messy things, and more often than not, they leave scars. Okay. Take your time. He gives himself a minute, catches his breath. Like I said, I don't feel safe in there, but I'm drunk enough that it doesn't faze me. Still got a buzz going from earlier in the night, you know. I think to myself, I came to take a shit, and some spooky shadows aren't gonna stop me. He chuckles to himself and shakes his head, but a few seconds later I'm in the bathroom locking the door behind me. I figure why take the chance. He's nervous, jittery, his legs bouncing up and down and shaking the table. It's beginning to affect my ability to write. Would you like a glass of water? I ask. I'm fine. Humor me. I grab the jug and pour him a cup, sliding it across the table. He eyes it for a moment and then grips the glass, bringing it to his lips and drowning it in one swig. I pour him another. So, he says, wiping his lips, I'm about to unbuckle and do my business when I see movement. It's in the top corner of the bathroom in one of those little toilet windows, like the type that's clouded on the bottom for privacy or whatever, but clear on the top to let in light. I've seen those. Is that when you witnessed the event? That's where I saw the smile. Jagged Janice. Describe it. Honestly, I... Starts to sound hesitant, worried. I'd rather not describe the smile. If you could, wouldn't it be better just talk about the event instead? The smile is part of the event, I remind him. It's important that we get as many details as possible, no matter how uncomfortable your memories may be. He looks down and his eyes drift out of focus. The smile is just a row of teeth, but the teeth are too big and too sharp to belong to a human, and there are so many of them. I check my notes, consulting depictions of Jagged Janice listed in the old email chains from the early 2000s. I'd like to hear more about these teeth. Why? The teeth are important. Describe them, please. The man is uncomfortable. He's shifting in his seat like quicksand, and when he talks, his voice cracks, but he gives me what I want. Teeth are jagged, he says. Serrated, almost. Their length is all over the place. Some barely break her gums, the others stretch down, cutting through her lips. His fingers move again. They're tapping on the metal table. Tap, tap, tap. When I see the smile, my heart starts pounding, and I'm frozen there, standing in the dark bathroom with just the light of my phone. My mind's reeling. I know whoever that smile belongs to. I don't want them seeing me, so I hold up my phone against my chest, tight as I can. I smother the light. The light, I say. Did the women showcase an adverse reaction to it? Janice, according to her legend, loathes light. No, he says, shaking his head. I don't know, I can't remember small details. He pauses and reaches for a glass of water before taking another gulp. At that point, my body's mostly just adrenaline. There's a storm of it coursing through me and screaming at me to run or fight or scream, fight Bitch, just do something, anything, but I can't. I just stand there, staring at her inhuman teeth, at her horrible, twisted smile, with my phone clutched to my chest like a crucifix. And the smile begins to fall away, lowering itself till it's just a blur behind the foggy part of the window. In its place are two eyes. The man takes a breath, shuddering, trembling. They're wide, angled all wrong, and they're leaking this black fluid. They dart around the washroom as they're looking for something. I stay still as I can, like I'm fucking paralyzed. There's no light in the room, none except the bit of moon framing the monster in the window, so I let myself meld into the darkness. I don't move an inch, and I pray to God the creature can't see me there. He shivers, reaches for the cigarette, and takes a drag. Then I hear the tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap. It's followed by this chattering sound, and it takes me a second to realize it's her teeth gnashing together, open and shut, over and over again. I don't want to look at her, I don't. But part of me can't stop myself, and I glance up to see her eyes staring back at me, two tiny black dots in a sea of white. My breathing stops, my pulse races, dribbles of piss run down my leg. It's just the two of us now, watching each other. I leaned forward, my interest piqued. Much of his description could have been pulled from the Jagged Janice legend itself, the small black pupils, the rows of inhuman teeth. I check off the features on my clipboard as he goes. What does she do? I ask when you lock eyes with her. He swallows. She speaks. Oh, what does she say? She says, he stammers, I see you. I write the words down and circle them 3 times. They're not familiar to me. Describe her voice to me. Did she sound young, old? Her voice was quiet, hard to hear. The words sound like they've been pulled out of a wood chipper. Their pronunciation was broken and unnatural, like they've been cut up by those teeth. Curious, I mutter. Her fingers reach up and she taps at the glass again. Tap, tap, tap. I chance another look and all I can see is her terrible, serrated smile in the window. It's making me feel nauseous. I've never been that scared, you know? I close my eyes wanting the feeling to go away for just a second, but when I open them again, the smile is gone. It's just me, alone in the bathroom. He puts his face in his hands and the armor falls away. His shoulders quake with silent sobs. I give him a minute, and then another. Is that all? I ask. No response. It's apparent that his account has reached its conclusion. Disappointing, to say the least. A harrowing experience, I say, giving my form a final swipe with my pen. With a sigh, I stand up from my chair, reaching out to shake his hand. On behalf of the facility, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share it with me. The man's sobs taper off. He blinks up at me with red, puffy eyes, and when he speaks, his voice is barely there at all. It's not over, he says. There's more. My heart thrums as I pull back my handshake. A smile slips across my face as I sit back down in my chair, centering my clipboard in front of me. Something else occurred? Yeah, he says, wiping his nose on his sleeve. The next few hours turned into a nightmare. That's the end of part 1.
Part 1, okay. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
It kind of reminds me of, like, you know, like Jeff the Killer.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me a bit of that.
Yeah.
Fair, you know, it's decently written, you know.
Yeah.
It's fun to read at least.
But yeah, I mean that was a pretty simple so far. This part 2 seems to be about the same length. So I suppose we can just get into it. Okay. Right. If you see a woman with a serrated smile, you need to read this as a matter of life and death. Part 2, final. Okay. And feel free to interrupt if you have any comments or anything.
All right.
I click my pen, skin prickling with goosebumps. You don't say. Now it's my turn to take a breath to center myself and calm my nerves. How very unfortunate. Yeah, you could say that, he says, sarcasm thick in his voice. Please continue then. It takes me 10 minutes before I can muster the courage to crack the bathroom door. When I do it gently, quietly. You can hardly even hear the shitty hinges creak. That's how careful I am. peek out of the crack, looking for the smiling woman, terrified that I'm going to see her standing in the living room, waiting for me, but I don't. There's nobody else in the cabin. It's just me. So I step out, moving across the hardwood floor. It creaks and groans with every step I take, and each time that it does, my heart skips a beat. I expect her to see her jump out of the darkness. I'm seeing the smile everywhere now. In every shadow and every window, I want to shout and scream. I want to call to my friends in the tent and beg them to pull me out of this horror. But they're beyond the cabin door, out there at the far end of the yard. They're a world away. And your phone? I ask. You never thought to use that to call for help? Yeah, sure, he says, rolling his eyes. I'm on a backwater island off the coast of rural BC. I've got great cell service out there. He shakes his head. I couldn't get a cell signal if I climbed at the top of the tallest tree. My phone was a glorified flashlight. A fair point. Since I can't call for help, I psych myself up. I've got my hand on the front doorknob and I'm ready to fling the door open and scream bloody murder. Run to my friends and tell them we need to start the truck now because there's a fucking monster on the island and that's when I hear it. His fingers thrum the metal desk. Tap, tap, tap. In the window next to the front door, I see a long arm and a frayed sleeve with crooked fingers playing against the glass. They're drumming a rhythm, something awful. Its noise masquerading as a song. Then I hear her again. I see you, she says in a gravely guttural voice. The tapping gets faster, heavier. I pull away from the window, from the door, and fall back into the shadow of the cabin. She must be 12 feet tall because her head cranes down into the window frame all the way from the top of it. Her eyes are gleaming in the moonlight, darting around and swiveling again in ways they shouldn't be able to. She's searching again for something. Me, maybe? I don't know. The man finishes his cigarette and slips a fresh one out of the pack. He lights it, trembling, and sucks in on the nicotine. His expression softens. Then she's gone, he says. Gone? I ask, disappointed. Again? There's nothing in the Jagged Janice mythology that indicates her vanishing and reappearing at irregular intervals. Gone, he confirms. I'm alone. Time passes, minutes, maybe hours. I don't know. I just sit there in the living room, my ears and eyes straining for any sound, any movement, anything at all. I'm shaking and breathing in short bursts, terrified if I breathe too heavily, she'll hear me. I wonder to myself how long it's been, how long there's still to go until the sun rises and somebody wakes up and comes to check on me or use the washroom. I think about using my phone to check the time, but the idea of its black light giving me away terrifies me, so I don't. I just sit there and wait. How long do you wait? Until morning? He laughs, takes another drag. Fuck no, he says. It takes a while, but eventually I got calmer, or maybe too scared to keep sitting there doing nothing. Maybe I just need to reassure myself that this nightmare has an ending. I don't know. He gnaws at his fingernail, fucking quivering as I pull my phone out of my pocket, shaking like a leaf. I turn it on, and my home screen lights up my face like I'm about to tell a campfire story. What time is it? 3:34 a.m., 2 hours from sunrise at the time of the year. The man sighs, running a hand along his jaw. It's too long for me. I can't do it, you know? I decided to do something now before the woman comes back because I have this horrible feeling that the next time she shows up, she's going to be inside the cabin. She's going to find me. So I tell myself to make a run for it. Wake up, my friends. It's easy, I think. I'll open my mouth and fucking scream my lungs out. And that way, even if she gets in the way, then at least everybody on the island will wake up and maybe I'll get out of there in one piece. So I do it. I open my mouth and I scream. But nothing happens, he says quietly. His expression darkens. Tears slip from the corners of his eyes and his lip trembles all over again. No sound comes out. Instead, a hand that's long and crooked wraps itself around my mouth. It pulls my head back, and I smell rotten decay and seaweed. And a voice whispers in my ear like a lawnmower. I see you. Janice, I lean forward, gazing at him expectantly. How did you get away? He wipes at his eyes, choking back at the last of his sobs. No idea. I blacked out. When I woke up, I wasn't in the cabin anymore. I was in the hospital bed, surrounded by my friends. Same ones from the cabin? That's right. I check a box on the form labeled Survivor. Then I chew on the back of my pen for a second before checking a second box. Post-traumatic stress affected. And what do these friends say? Anything useful? They tell me it's all their fault, he says. Mumbles about how we should never have come out to the cabin in the first place. Steve and Haley are blaming themselves for letting me get exceptionally drunk. He cracks a bittersweet smile. Everybody wants a share of the guilt. My eyes drift down to the man's file. You said the island was remote. I'll assume the hospital wasn't local to it? No, he says. It was off the island, an hour or so inland. I must have been out for a day at least, though, because I don't remember ever traveling there. Interesting. A recurring aspect of the Janice mythology is a sense of mild amnesia and the presence of a minor to severe bite wounds. What did the hospital treat you for? He clears his throat, a mild concussion, and water in my lungs. Water in your lungs? I shake my head, dropping my pencil. Perhaps I should be happy that young man survived whatever terror visited him that night, but so many pieces of his story don't match the mythology at all. You're certain? Water in your lungs. That's right, he says. The doctors didn't understand it either. I never even got a chance to take a dip in the ocean, let alone drown in it. Okay, let me get this straight. So your friends pop by, leave you some get well cards, and you get discharged a couple of days later? I lean back in the chair, folding my arms. Does that about sum things up? The man looks away, rubbing his arm. Not exactly, he says darkly. Before they leave, I tell them about the smiling woman. I ask them if they've seen a tall woman with razor-sharp teeth lurking around the island. Steve and Haley look at each other like I must have hit my head harder than anybody thought. The look in their eyes is like they're terrified I've given myself brain damage. Steve squeezes my arm and apologizes over and over for doing shots with me. Says he should have gone easy for the first night. Haley agrees, says I drove them all the way out there, so they should have let me get some sleep. And your other friend? I ask. Emily? She's standing back, staring at me, and her eyes are filled with, I don't know, regret? But it's different from Steve and Haley. She doesn't look like she feels sorry for me. She looks like she really blames herself for all of this. I say her name, Emily. Ask her if she's seen the woman because I get the sense that she has. I slide my pen down my clipboard and circle a word that says witness before annotating it with a small question mark. How does she respond? She leaves, he says with a sigh. I don't think she wants to talk about that woman. At least not in front of Haley and Steve. Pretty soon everybody leaves. It's just me again, in some tiny hospital on the outskirts of nowhere. The only company I've got is the apple tree outside my window and the shitty TV. I sleep pretty uneasily that night, tossing and turning, and wake up at one point to the sound of tapping. And I stare out the window, horrified, expecting to see that woman again. But it's just the apple tree. Its branches are brushing against the glass. I wonder to myself if this is just my life from now on. If everything I hear from the faintest sound at night, I'm going to wake up in cold sweats thinking the woman comes back for me. Then the door creaks open. My body goes into full-blown panic. My breath hitches in my chest, my muscles tighten, and it's like that night all over again, with the smiling woman where I can't move an inch for fear. But it's just Emily, he says, chuckling in disbelief. She pauses in the doorway and asks me if she can come in. I tell her that of course she can, and she does. Not bothering to turn on the lights when she gets to my bedside, I can see her face more clearly by the light of the window. She looks rough. Her eyes have these heavy bags, and her cheeks are all red and splotchy from crying. She's wiping snot on her sleeve and telling me sorry over and over again. Sorry for what? Inviting you to the cabin? I say, doing my best not to roll my eyes. I've never seen a group of friends with such a guilty conscience. No, the man says. She's sorry for not warning me about the woman. She says she thought the woman was gone, otherwise she'd never have come back to that place. What? I snap forward, eyes latching onto his. She told you she knew about the woman? He nods. She said circumstances of her brother's death were different than she'd originally told us. He didn't drown, not accidentally. He was murdered. A woman attacked them on the beach, a woman with a terrible smile and his tangle of black, messy hair that covered her face. She dragged M's brother backward through the sand, muffling his screams with her hand, and then held him under the surf. She kept him there until he stopped moving. Then she let the tide take him away. Disturbing, I say. And she never brought this up to her parents? She did. Her father told her it was just her imagination. He said that her brother had fallen into the ocean and gotten swept away, and it was already hard enough to deal with without Emily adding to it. So Emily just buried the memory, moved on. The man looks at me, his expression despondent. That's when we hear it, he says. In the hospital room, a tapping, tap, tap, tap. It comes from the window to my right, the one with the old apple tree. The woman? I don't look. I tell Emily not to look either. I tell her to focus on me, to ignore the sound. I don't know what she saw as a little girl down by the ocean, but I don't want her to see what I saw at the cabin. He shudders. I don't want her to see the smile. Does she listen to you? He grips a fistful of his hair, closes his eyes. No. He says quietly. She looks, and when she does, she screams. She screams so loudly that the lights come on down the hall, and I hear the night nurse call out and start running. Emily rushes towards the window. I catch sight of it from the corner of my eye because I still refuse to look at the pane of glass, but I hear Emily beating against the wall with her fists, clawing at it with her nails. Then the nurses burst and pulls Emily away, calls a patrol car to drive her home. The man takes a breath. He puts his face in his hand and rubs his eyes. I text her an hour later just to make sure that she's okay, and yes, I say, cutting him off. I glance at the folder on my desk labeled correspondence, then down at the watch on my wrist. Okay. It's 3 a.m. and I'm jet lagged. The meat of the man's story appears to have run its course. If the texts are everything that's left when I can read them on my own. I arise from the desk, offer my hand to shake. He gives it a weak, reluctant squeeze, avoiding my eyes. Then he leaves the room without another word. I sigh, sitting back down in the steel chair. Another long day, another dead end. I adjust my glasses and pull out the text logs. There's only a handful of messages, receipts. The chance is slim, but the possibility that there's something in there about Jagged Janice entices me too much to set them aside for tomorrow. Remind me, what is the Jagged Janice that he's looking for? I don't remember exactly that in the beginning of the story.
He didn't specify. He was simply he didn't say how he knew. Just
Fair enough.
just that this sounds exactly like it. The only thing that he found off was the I see you. He didn't know about that.
I begin to read. As I do, I make note of the timestamps. Words do a job of painting a picture, but time and location lend context to everything. 1:34. I'm guessing this is like what, 1:34 a.m. or something? All it is timestamps. So, yeah. So, 1:34. Dorian, are you okay? 2:12. Emily, not really. 2:12. Dorian, did you see her? I'll just keep reading this without the timestamps because it's just a lot, unless it makes a significant jump. Okay, so 2:12. Did you see her? Okay, and then 30 minutes pass. 2:45. Dorian, I'm sorry. That was a stupid text. It's fine. Dorian, I'm guessing you don't feel like talking. Actually, it might be good for me. Yeah? Okay, me too. I never got a chance to tell you earlier, but I can't imagine how horrible it must have felt to see what happened to your brother and have your dad not believe you. That's fucked. It's fine. We were never close anyway. Sorry to hear. Did you ever tell your mom? I mean, before she passed? No, Mom was already dying by then, and Dad would have killed me. Fuck, I'm an asshole. How could I forget something like that? Sorry again. You're not an asshole, you're right. I would have told her about Jonas if I could have. By then she was so hopped up on painkillers, though, that I hardly even recognized her. The meds must have been pretty heavy. That's a lot to deal with for a 4-year-old kid. Wait, was Emily 4 years old when she saw this happening?
Yeah, well, I think earlier she said 3. No, but maybe they said 4.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
So
When she saw the murder take place, yeah.
well, yeah, no wonder why nobody believed her.
They were like, he drowned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, her esophageal cancer was bad. She was in a lot of pain near the end and rarely in a good mood. Pretty sure Dad was having an affair at the time, too. Fucking prick. Damn, Dad. Such a prick. Dorian, I'm sorry. That's a shitty memory to bring up. Who's Dorian? Am I forgetting something?
He's the dude, right?
He's the one that was being interviewed?
Yeah, but they never said his name in the first part.
Okay, so he was the one that had the experience, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's Dorian. Okay, good to know.
Dorian.
I didn't know that. Now the audience knows. All right. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Shitty memory to bring up. 303. Don't be. I think I repress a lot of old memories of her, which probably isn't healthy. Honestly, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably think I was going crazy right now. Dorian. Why? I saw her too. The smiling woman? And then that's 306. She's not responding. 307. Dorian M. And then 334, Emily. My mother. I see my mother. I stare at the word in stunned silence. Her mother? Could she actually have been the origin of the legend? I rub a hand along my jaw, considering what I've heard of Emily's history. She had only been 4 years old at the time of her brother's death, when she had witnessed a crazed woman drag him into the sea, a woman who she couldn't identify because black hair obscured her face. Could that woman have been her own mother? It doesn't seem terribly likely, but it doesn't seem impossible either. Children often reframe moments of terror in a bid to understand the incomprehensible. I reach for my briefcase, unclasping the latches on the front and pulling out my laptop. I take a breath and then open up the database software. Emily's easy enough to find. Her last name is plastered everywhere across social media, so I plug that in. The search function isn't the fastest, but it does the trick. It takes 30 seconds for the tiny rotating hourglass to stop spinning, and when it does, I see her. Subject, Emily Caldwell. Father, Harold Caldwell. Mother, Janice Caldwell. Deceased. Janice, there's the legend. Oh my god. Janice
Soprano.
Yeah. I swallow, my hand shaking on the keyboard. Ooh. Had I finally found Jagged Janice? I pour myself a glass of water, finishing it in 2 giant swigs. It does little to calm my nerves. Still, it's one piece of the puzzle solved. But really, it just creates more questions. It doesn't explain several aspects of the man's story, the water in the lungs, for instance, or the vanishing. Certain pieces of his encounter don't add up, at least not compared against the original legend. There's a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps with a knuckle. What? 3 sharp raps.
It's like Edgar Allan.
Yeah.
It's like Edgar Allan Poe. Rap tap tap.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Okay.
It's not like a rap. You know.
I'm pretty sure that there was a hip hop artist out there
named Jagged Janice,
ready to slay some bars. Yeah. Like, I hear you've been talking shit and looking for me.
I shred
Jagged
bars
Janice.
because I'm Jagged Janice.
I got sharp teeth and a big smile.
Because I'm cutting sweet rhymes.
Okay. So Jagged Janice comes in with her bling.
Cool.
3 sharp raps with a knuckle. I get up to answer it, thinking maybe the man's forgotten his phone or wants to give me back my pack of smokes. When I open the door, there's nobody. Bum, bum, bum. I raise an eyebrow and head back to my laptop. I need to discover the source of these changes. These departures from the Jagged Janice mythology. This time I bring up my web browser, navigating to one of my preferred resources on urban legends. Website's a bit corny, but it's proven accurate, and its community aspect has been invaluable in my research. After some scrolling, I bring up the Jagged Janice article. People can leave anecdotal encounters beneath the main text, and sometimes they do. Usually, they're all bullshit. One of them...
Didn't he just say it was reliable? The original article, but the responses are usually bullshit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. One of them catches my eye. However, I read that weird. One of them catches my eye, however. It mentions seeing the serrated smile, the tapping fingers, and that they found their infant child dead with water in its lungs. I shake my head. A coincidence, that's all. I keep scrolling. More keywords jump out at me. There and then gone. Voice like a meat grinder. To the sea with you. I pause. Those are the words Emily said. Words she remembered when she witnessed her brother being pulled into the ocean. To the sea with you. My mind spins, but a picture is forming. The guttural, difficult to understand voice. The drowned brother. The words. I see you. No. She was never saying those words. Not really. She was saying, to the sea with you. The man misheard, or perhaps he couldn't properly understand because of Janice's damaged voice. In his panic, he likely defaulted to the simplest sounding phrase. My heart races. I reach for my phone to make a call to tell my boss what I've found. It wasn't long ago the facility had an incident with a man with a red notepad one in which we learned the core principle of all legends, and one which cost many people their lives. The legends evolve. That legends evolve. If the Jagged Janice legend has evolved, we need to allocate additional resources to locating it and neutralizing it. I continue to scroll, noticing many of the anecdotes have been posted in the last week, several in the last few days. Even if half of them are true, it'd imply highly increased activity on Janice's part. I hear another knock at the door. 3 soft raps. I curse, kicking off from my desk and storming to the door. Phone still pressed to my face, waiting for my boss to pick up. Once more, I swing it open, and once more, I look down a cold, empty hallway. I slam the door shut and stalk back to the table. My phone continues to ring, and my boss continues to ignore my call. It's really not like her, but I tell myself to relax. She's probably sleeping. According to my watch, it's late as hell. 3:34 a.m. in the morning. 3:34 in the morning, to be precise. That makes me an asshole, maybe, but this discovery is too big, too dangerous to ignore. Janice is out there, and she's on the move. I've decided to post this before I go. Call it a hunch or a bad feeling, but I want to make sure there's a record of what I've done here. 3 more knocks ring out. These are softer than before, more gentle, almost taps. That's it. That is the end of it, it seems.
So overall, not quite what we expected, but
not quite.
You know, good to read Reddit urban legend story.
My little green light died right as the story died. Does it mean
good.
something? I think I hear tapping on my door. At the end of I don't know if you still have it pulled up. At the end, it has like some X's to click on, and then there's like pictures. Jagged Janice.
Yeah, I saw them.
I'm not
Pretty
sure.
cool design. Yeah, well, the story was fun to read. It was a classic Reddit horror story. Kind of an intriguing backstory. For Jagged Janice, I suppose.
Did it cover anything as far as like what is Jagged Janice's goals? Like what is the whole purpose?
I don't know.
It's just to be
She's just messing with people.
Spooky and have serrated teeth.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because the backstory was like she's focused on that cabin, and then the narrator guy's like, I've heard stories from all over about it.
Yeah, but then it doesn't really touch on much when it comes to...
No.
And then was the cabin like close to the ocean? Or... Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So... I don't know, just kind of a mid story, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty mid.
Yeah.
It was fun reading it, though. We should do it again for maybe something that's a bit better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We'll have to keep on looking and find something good. But, yeah, until next time, I suppose. And actually, yeah, please comment and let us know some stories that maybe we could read. Give us some inspiration, some links maybe. Some popular ones that you like and whatnot, and we can kind of check them out and give some thoughts on them. Unfortunately, this one, there's not many thoughts to have. It is a little, it's alright. It's alright. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, let us now depart for the dark that may or may not be fictitious.
Do you think this one was truth or fictitious?
I think completely true.
Completely. There's definitely
more real than anything we talked about so far.
There's definitely some secret government agency.
The facility.
The facility looking for spooky legends and myths.